It's a desire we all share, to lead a rich, fulfilling, happy life. But you can't always get what you want.
Is happiness an experience that comes and goes, or is it a state that you can live in for long periods of time? I don't know.
This emotional life is a roller coaster, taking us from the heights of ecstasy to the depths of despair and every place between.
All emotions have a role in a healthy life. We're not automatons.
I'm Dan Gilbert, and in this series, I'm going to introduce you to everyday people who are searching for happiness, as well as to the scientists and clinicians who are trying to help them find it.
What I've taken away is the resilience of the human spirit. It is just amazing what we can go through and be okay.
I thought I was going crazy.
The dreams, the nightmares.
But I'm not letting it beat me. What more can I say? I'm a happy camper.
We'll see how our greatest source of happiness lies in the people around us.
A basic need for human beings is love, is companionship.
We'll explore the obstacles to happiness, emotions such as fear, sadness, and anger.
Have I lost it to the point where I did feel like I've lost it? Yeah.
I went through like 6 or 7 years of real depression. I just was never quite given the right pill.
But next, we'll see what happiness is, what causes it, and why we look for it in all the wrong places.
I won the lottery, but being happy/content takes work.
I used to think that things would make me happy. More money, success. I'm realizing now that that's not the fact. Happiness comes from within, and happiness comes from experiences that we have with people that we love.
Coming up, rethinking happiness on This Emotional Life.
Funding for This Emotional Life is provided by the following.
I was in Dubai, the Gulf, China, Japan. You name it, wherever I was at, I was able to do my job, take care of the country, as well as get my degree at the same time. My name is Marquita. I'm a petty officer, first class in the United States Navy, and I am a Phoenix.
SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration.
And by
the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. And by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
Everybody wants happiness. It's a universal human desire. But it's a desire not easily satisfied. We search without finding it, and when we do find it, it doesn't seem to last very long.
Why is it that it is so difficult for us to hold on to contentment? And why are we so fleeting, and why are we so fickle? Why is it that one day the things that make us happy, the next day bring us misery?
Happiness, get over yourself. What happiness? You know, life is going to be always challenging, is always going to be a pain, so get over it.
I don't think it's that much of a mystery. If you don't have a job that you like, and you're not having sex, you're just not going to be happy.
I think happiness is a temporary state, but it's a juicy one.
I'm Dan Gilbert. I'm a social psychologist and a professor here at Harvard University. For centuries, happiness has been a subject for poets and philosophers. But in the last few decades, psychologists, neuroscientists, even economists have begun to study happiness using the same scientific methods they use to study every other aspect of human behavior. Of course, scientists have only recently gotten into the happiness business, but that business has been booming for a long time.
You have to train your mind to recall the simple successes you can have.
Turn on the television, surf the web, visit a bookstore, and you'll see that there's no shortage of people offering advice about happiness.
Success University. Gonna be fun, y'all.
All my needs, desires, and goals.
They're all part of a large and growing business known as the self-help industry.
The liberation from the horizontal image.
This industry may or may not have made anyone happy, but it's definitely made some people very rich. Last year, Americans spent about $10 billion on self-help.
You're in the preferred section.
Much of that money was brought in by conferences like this one, run by Hay House, a leading self-help publisher. Hay House sells books and DVDs on everything from diet and personal fitness to fairy magic and angel therapy.
There's a lot of money to be spent here.
Yes, there is.
Yes. How much money are you going to spend here?
Not that much. Well, we didn't even make it around the tables, but it looks like we're going to be spending a lot. Stuff looks great.
The desire for happiness drives different people toward different things. Some have come here hoping to lose weight. Some are hoping to find a new partner, a new career, or a whole new view of the universe.
Unbelievably, amazingly, in the mind over body connection.
Yeah.
Getting a better job, love,
Yep.
relationships,
all the
that
good
kind
things
of
in
stuff.
life. But some people have come here with very serious problems, and they may not be in the right place. Many have been drawn by Louise Hay, the founder of Hay House. She claims to have cured herself of cancer through positive thinking and other self-help techniques, and she tells others that they can do it too. Although her claims have never been medically verified, she's been a guest on Oprah, and her memoir, Heal Your Life, has sold over 35 million copies, making her one of the best-selling authors of all time.
Please join me in welcoming Louise Hay.
I choose the thoughts that make me feel good. And if you will be very careful about the thoughts you think, that you choose to think.
Hay is right when she says that our thoughts affect our feelings and that we have some control over the thoughts we think.
Life loves you. I love you. Do you love you? That's the important thing. Thank you. Thank you. I accept. I do. You're damn right.
But Hay also believes that thoughts are the cause of all misfortunes.
Because remember, somebody who has depression is choosing thoughts that make them feel rotten.
That by thinking the wrong way, we can give ourselves cancer or AIDS or depression, cause cars to hit us, or make ourselves the target of a terrorist attack.
And when I became 80, I decided that it was going to be the best decade of my entire life. And it is. I'm 82.
As I go through your book, I see all sorts of maladies and various kinds of thoughts that you say can cause them. Alzheimer's is an inability to face life, leprosy, inability to handle life at all.
Oh, you're picking the fun ones. People who have Alzheimer's are really removing themselves from life completely.
How do you know? How do you know what you're saying is
my
right?
inner ding.
Your inner ding?
My inner ding.
Ding?
It speaks
Okay.
to me, yes.
Okay.
It feels right or it doesn't feel right. Happiness is choosing thoughts that make you feel good. It's really very simple.
I hear you saying that even if there were no proof for what you believed, or even if there was scientific evidence against it.
Oh, I don't
change it.
believe in scientific evidence. I really don't. And science is fairly new. It hasn't been around that long. We think it's such a big deal, but it's, it's just a way of looking at life.
But you're telling it to millions of people, and you're telling them it's right for them, too.
I'm telling them what's right for me. My inner ding, that's all I can say.
You know what? Science is fairly new. But when we want to know what causes stars to explode or butterflies to migrate, we rely on scientific evidence rather than our inner ding. So why not do the same thing to find out what causes human happiness?
For thousands of years, philosophers were asking about happiness and talking about happiness, but without any data. And only probably in the last 30 or 40 years have we actually collected scientific data, rigorous data, measured happiness, and started to begin to see what is it that leads to happiness.
Psychologist Ed Diener is a pioneer in the study of happiness. Since 1980, he and his collaborators have crossed the globe to measure it, surveying diverse communities from the Maasai tribe in Africa to the Inuit of northern Canada to the Amish of rural Pennsylvania and many, many others. And the methods Diener uses are as diverse as his subjects.
In happiness research, we ask people how happy they are on a 1 to 10 scale. We also look at brain waves. You can look at hormones like cortisol that reflect stress, for example. You can also ask family and friends how happy that person is, because family and friends see how happy they say they are and how happy they act in everyday lives.
Diener has gathered data on nearly 250,000 people and has found that the happy ones have better health, better relationships, better sex lives, better careers, and better just about everything else.
We think that's an evolutionary thing, and the people who are happy probably out-achieve the other people and out-reproduce them, and there's more of us around now.
Diener's findings have been confirmed by psychologists, neuroscientists, and economists around the world. We now know a great deal about what actually makes people happy, and it isn't always what we think. What does happiness mean to you?
I'm a firm believer in money is happiness, okay? I have to be honest. With my children, because I love my children.
I like my summer camp the best.
Is that the best? That makes you happy? What do you do to make yourself happier?
Well, I don't mean to be recalcitrant, but I don't do anything in order to be happy.
Rolling down your window and turning the music on, letting the breeze come in.
What would you say is your greatest source of happiness?
Well, I get a great deal of happiness from beautiful jewelry.
Jewelry?
Yes.
There are a lot of different opinions about what causes happiness, but research suggests that not all of them are exactly on target. And do you think marriage is a source of happiness?
Most of the time.
Depends on what your marriage is like.
What do you think about marriage? Do you think it's a source of happiness for most people? No. What about marriage? Do you think married people are happier than unmarried people?
No. I don't think they're less happy. I think it just depends.
Not everyone lives happily ever after, of course, but studies do show that, on average, married people are wealthier, healthier, and, yes, happier than others. Do you think children make people happy?
I think so.
I mean, I think they'll be a part of my happiness.
Yes or no? Do children make you happy?
Mine do.
So what about those bundles of joy? Well, studies show that parents are no happier than non-parents and are often less happy. Can money buy happiness?
No, it doesn't.
Do you think money can buy happiness? Can it bring happiness?
No.
Does money buy happiness?
Not at all.
What about money? Do you think money makes people happy?
Absolutely.
Yeah? And the more the better?
For me, especially, the more the better.
Guess what? Money does cause happiness. On average, the more money people have, the happier they tend to be. So money, yes. Marriage, probably. Children, not so much. What science is teaching us about these and many other things is that they are related to happiness, but not necessarily in the way you might think.
I grew up in the South Bronx. We had every gang banger, the Savage Skulls and the Bloods and the this and the that. It was difficult to survive, and I was always one paycheck away from being homeless. So, for 2.5 years, every week, regardless of what the jackpot was, I would go in and just play the lottery.
Falcon won $45 million. He is New York's single largest winner ever. Today, the former starving artist said he'll take his winnings and begin his dream performance, a one-man show he calls A Short Puerto Rican Guy Sings Songs of Angst.
And now I can afford to rent out a theater and do it the way I want to do it. I'm a performance artist. Usually people are always telling me what it is I should be doing, and I shouldn't be doing that, and I should be doing this, and now I'm just going to do it my way. Flash! Bam! Wonderful you came.
Life is change, and money is going to change you. I moved into a beautiful building, an uber luxury apartment in an uber luxury building. I'm getting all the things that I dreamt of getting. Anything Italian is a great pleasure. It applies to so many things. The art, the clothing, all the good stuff is from Italy. It just is, you know. It's the fun of collecting, and I've always been a collector.
When people are asked what would most improve their lives, they almost always say more money. But are they right?
We've done a lot of research on money and happiness over the last couple decades, and what we find is coming out of poverty increases your happiness. So if you take somebody who wins a lottery and they were in financial trouble, they had no money, it could make a significant difference to their happiness. Now, on the other hand, what if the richest man in the world wins a 100 million lottery? And now instead of having 50 billion, he has 50 billion and 100 million. It's nothing. So it really does make a difference where you start in terms of what kind of impact money will make.
When it comes to happiness, every dollar you earn buys just a little bit less than the last one. Of course, if money doesn't make you happy, then you just might not be spending it right.
What we know about lottery winners is that when they make changes in their life and lose their friends, when they make changes in their life and misspend money on drugs and so forth, from a number of cases we know that that's going to make you unhappy. On the other hand, some people who use their money correctly and they use their money to help their family, they use their money to help charity, those kind of people can be happier.
The thought came to me, oh my goodness, I'll be able to, send my niece and nephew to college, be able to pay for college. And I got weak in the knees. I never would have thought I'd be able to give them anything but, flying kites and an occasional electrified train or something. I mean, here's the idea that they can go to college, at any college. Oh, did the new money strain any relationships? Yes, quite a few. There were friends that I've had, all my friends were struggling painters, writers, singers, performance artists, whatever, and a few of them couldn't handle it. All of a sudden I became something else to them and they just couldn't handle it. Why? I don't know, because we stopped speaking. But, there are other friends who did hang around and we're still friends. Okay.
He's very open. You don't meet people that are as open as he is that often. John is the person you can laugh with, you can get serious with, you can argue with. And he's just a very stimulating, fun, interesting man.
Lois Mervis is one of John Falcone's oldest friends. She met him 20 years ago when both were struggling artists.
Wow, these are beautiful.
After John won the lottery, he hired Lois to help design and decorate his home.
Yeah, it needs to be longer or thicker or something just to be a little more presentational. But it's a beautiful doorknob.
I don't know if I've ever told this to John. When my husband came home and told me that John had won the lottery, I got very concerned. I thought, oh, poor John, what a responsibility. Money is fun. Money gives you the freedom to do all kinds of things, but it's also a burden. And I've always impressed with John. I have to give him credit for that. He's a frivolous man, but he's not foolish. And I've watched him take this responsibility and have fun and yet be supportive to his family. So he's taken all of these elements that are quite often misused, and he's used them very well.
It takes a lot more work to be happy than it does to be unhappy, to be miserable. Misery is so easy. You can just go right into it. I'm unhappy about this. I don't like that color. I don't like scallops. I don't like it. You can just go right into it and just it snowballs. It snowballs. But being happy / content takes work. You have to work at it. Yeah, I think so far it's been fun. But is it a life well lived? I don't think a life well lived depends on money. So I don't know if my life is well lived. I think other people have to judge that.
Anyone that tells you money doesn't bring happiness is an ass, is a fool.
I think what happens with more money is that there are more highs available
So there's more access to shopping, drugs, trips. There's more access to highs. So if we call that happiness, yeah, more available. But I don't call that happiness.
There is no key to happiness in my book, except maybe, another $20 million film, which will never happen. So I can't look forward to great happiness ahead.
Money can't buy you fulfillment. It can sometimes buy you peace of mind, but it can't make you a happier person. And in some ways, knowing that makes you even less of a happy person.
So what is the relationship between money and happiness? Well, most of us think that if we were a whole lot richer, we'd be a whole lot happier. But research shows this isn't necessarily true. So why do we all believe it? Well, as it turns out, people aren't very good at predicting what will and won't make them happy. In a recent experiment, researchers went to a health club and asked a simple question.
You're going to live in the woods for 2 days and 2 nights. You can have food or water, but not both. Which would you rather have, food or water?
Food. I'd say food.
Okay, circle that.
Some of the people were asked this question before they worked out. Some were asked after they worked out. And when they were asked made a huge difference in how they answered. In fact, people were 50% more likely to say water if they'd just finished working out than if they were about to start.
Water.
Definitely water.
Okay.
Why? People were thirsty after exercising, and because they were thirsty now, they imagined being thirsty in the future. This is something our brains do all the time. When we think about how we'll feel in the future, our thoughts are shaped by how we feel in the present. It's as if our brains can't believe that we might feel differently later than we do now. That's not the only thing our brains can't quite believe. We all know that feelings inevitably change over time, that new love fades, that fresh wounds heal. And yet, when we imagine our future joys and our future sorrows, we tend not to think about how time will change them.
We sure do have the compelling intuition that somehow improving our life circumstances, our situations, whether it has to do with relationships or jobs or health, that's going to make us happier. And the truth is that it does make us happier, but it doesn't make us happier for as long or as intensely as we think it would.
Psychologist Sonia Lubomirsky suggests that we're sadly mistaken when we expect that the things that make us happy for a day will make us happy for a lifetime.
It's a phenomenon called hedonic adaptation, which means that human beings basically are just incredibly good at getting used to, getting accustomed to adapting positive changes, especially in their lives, like the new car or the new house. And so that's one of the reasons that we keep sort of buying more stuff, is that we get the handbag that gives us a boost, it wears off, and then we get a new handbag.
Adaptation affects our experience of both good things and bad things in ways that we find difficult to anticipate. This is something my colleagues and I have been studying in the lab. And we'd be very happy to give you one as a gift for participating in the experiment. Which one would you like to have? In one experiment, we brought people into a room filled with art posters and offered to give them one. We told half of the participants that their decision was irreversible, and that once they'd made it, they could never change their minds. We told the other half that they could exchange the poster they chose for a different poster anytime they wanted. After making their choices, we asked both groups to rank their posters. And guess what? The people who knew they couldn't exchange their posters liked them more than the people who knew they could. Why? Because they had no choice. And so they adapted. The lesson of this study was clear. People find ways to like things when they're stuck with them. When we can't change our circumstances, we change the way we think about those circumstances. And yet, most of us don't seem to realize this will happen.
There's a part of me that is the most hyper person ever. The minute I was born, I was running. I was like a Red Bull baby.
Francesco Clark was a young man with big dreams when he moved to New York City to take a job in publishing.
It was very exciting. It was movies, it was television, it was celebrities, it was everything that 22-year-old graduating college kind of dreams of.
Then, in the blink of an eye, his life was forever transformed.
I had a summer rental, and I get to the house, and there was a pool, and it was a nice summer day, so naturally I wanted to go swimming. The second that I dove into the pool, my chin hit the bottom, and my head snapped back. In 1 millisecond, my life changed completely. I was told I was going to die 3 times that night. I couldn't breathe on my own. I was on a ventilator. I had a tube going down my mouth.
Francesco's doctors said that he'd never be able to move again.
I was depressed after the accident. That's a pretty big change of life. To then suddenly not be able to eat on your own or not be able to brush your teeth or to go to the bathroom. It's, you know, there's a sense of embarrassment that comes with it at first. When you can't feed yourself, when you can't scratch your nose, it can drive you crazy. So I just wanted to fix it. I just wanted to, you know, show them that I was going to get better. I had no choice. I mean, what are you going to do? You're just going to sit? You're just going to lay in bed and wither away? I didn't want to do that. I wanted to live. I started to feel better. It wasn't a specific day and it wasn't a specific time, but I realized that it wasn't about my injury anymore, and it wasn't about this metal frame that I sit on. It was more about, what do I want to do with my life?
After his accident, Francesco moved back in with his parents and began devoting long hours to a grueling routine of physical therapy.
I do very intensive physical therapy every day. I pedal this special bike with my arms and my legs. I sit up. I am relearning how to crawl. When I started to move my arms again, 6 months before, I can't move my arm. That sucks. But then moving it again makes you realize, oh my God, this is incredible. I can't believe I'm starting to use my wrist. I can't believe I'm moving my arm. I mean, you're moving your arm. When you don't have a spinal cord injury, you don't think about, God, I'm so thankful that I can breathe out of my left lung. I mean, you never think about that.
In the years since, Francesco has learned to move a lot more than just his body.
I started a skincare line called Clark's Botanicals. That started because of my injury. I lost the ability to sweat. It looked like I had specks of sand under each pore, and it was red, it was flaky, it was gray, it was sensitive, it looked like it was aging. I was kind of like, well, I've tried everything prescription, I've tried everything over the counter. I started to look at essential oils and botanical extracts. So I had these ugly little vials that I would use, and then my sister started using it, and then my mom started using it, and then my dad's patient started using it. And then I was kind of like, hold on, this isn't like, I'm just making this in the kitchen, I don't know what I'm doing. So it was very much an organic evolution of my injury.
Today, Francesco's products are sold all over the world, and he has the schedule of a busy CEO, running his own firm, writing a book, and working with the Christopher Reeve Foundation as an advocate for people with disabilities.
I'm very happy now. I love every aspect of my life, from work to my friends, to being with my family, to thinking about living an independent life. I'm still pretty much exactly who I was before. I laugh at the same jokes. I love the same movies. I have the same sense of curiosity, but I think that everything is more, I don't know. I'm just as stupid as I was before. It's just that I've learned more about myself.
The ability to bounce back is admirable, but it isn't unusual. People who suffer a wide range of traumas and tragedies tend to recover more quickly than they themselves would have predicted. Yes, they're sad, they're miserable, they're even devastated for a while. But studies show that most people end up being as happy or nearly as happy as they were before. Resilience isn't rare. In fact, it's very common.
There is some set point to happiness that you tend to return toward. And for some people, it's very happy, and for other people, it's mildly happy. And unfortunately, for a few people, it may not be happy. But the set point is good in the sense that when we have something terrible in our life happen to us, we get very depressed, we get less satisfied with our life. But slowly over time, we come back toward that set point.
This process is critical to human happiness. But how do we do it? And why do some of us do it so much more easily than others? For more than 15 years, Dr. Dennis Charney has been studying people who've shown exceptional resilience after trauma. From survivors of natural disasters, to prisoners of war, to the firemen who responded when the World Trade Center was attacked on September 11th.
It was fascinating to deal with resilient individuals because when you met them, you looked at them and thought, well, how did you do this? You know, you start thinking, could I have done that? How did they do it?
One of Charney's most interesting subjects was Bob Shoemaker, a former Navy pilot.
I grew up on a farm in western Pennsylvania, and my parents were middle class, so I consider myself fairly average. But average people get thrown into extraordinary situations.
Bob's ordeal began in 1965 when he was assigned to combat duty in Vietnam. He'd just been married and had a son. Then suddenly, life as he knew it came to an end.
The mission I was on was just north of the demilitarized zone that separated North Vietnam from South Vietnam. We were really low, and I pulled out right over a flak site, and they managed to hit me in the tail section, and the plane flipped upside down, and I ejected, and the parachute fortunately opened, but opened only 35 feet above the ground, and so I broke my back as I landed. That was it. You know, they got me, they bound me, had handcuffs on me behind my back, and marched me off.
For 8 years, Shoemaker was shuttled between North Vietnamese prisons, including the infamous Hanoi Hilton, where he was brutally tortured.
The really worst technique was what we call the rope treatment, where they would tie a rope from your handcuffs up over your shoulders and down to your feet, and they would tighten this thing up so that eventually your head would reach your feet. And you think it can't happen, you know, particularly when your knees are straight, but it was excruciating. And then they jammed an iron bar down my throat to keep me from screaming. So that was the technique that would get you to condemn your own grandmother if you had to.
The torture Shoemaker endured was not just physical. For almost 3 years, he was held in solitary confinement.
There were 11 of us in cells and no windows and a solitary light bulb hanging down that burned 24 hours a day.
To deal with his isolation, Shoemaker imagined the house that he would build for his young family if he ever returned.
I'm almost embarrassed to admit to you that there would be days when I would spend maybe 10 or 12 hours just thinking about how many bricks were in this house. I knew that there were, say, 5,227 nails in the thing and so many board feet of lumber. I'd spend a year and a half designing the perfect house, and then one day I'd say, well, what would happen if I moved the fireplace from this room to that room? And send me back to square one, and I'd redesign the thing.
Although Shoemaker was physically isolated from the other prisoners, together they created an ingenious form of communication.
We developed a tap code in which the alphabet was arranged in a square that had 5 rows and 5 columns. You'd say, that's the second row, second column, this is G. That's first row, second column, B, and U is fourth row, fifth column is the U. So GBU was God bless you. So the tap code really kept our spirits alive, our hopes alive, our dreams. And so we transmitted things like French lessons through the wall and music lessons and how to fix a television set and biology lessons. So we spent a lot of time on the wall.
These conversations were crucial to Shoemaker's survival, and they became a focus of Dennis Charney's research.
Social support is a key factor in becoming a resilient individual. You can't do it alone. You need other people. I think the tap code experience of the POWs is among the most important lessons. And we use the phrase that everybody needs a tap code. Everybody needs a way of communicating with other people to establish friendships that are supportive, to establish relationships that provide you a guidepost as you get through tough times.
Charney also discovered that highly resilient people tended to share some other qualities as well. They tended to have strong religious or moral beliefs, strong role models, and a strong streak of optimism.
It was not an unrealistic optimism. They were able to accurately apprise themselves of what they were facing. So it wasn't denial. They knew that they had been traumatized or they were facing a very difficult situation. But they had an ability to be optimistic that somehow that they would prevail.
You know, I only received 7 letters in 8 years, and the letters were occasionally pessimistic, like telling me my mother had suddenly died and things like that. And you just have to be able to, you know, just suck it up and reach down somewhere in your soul and come out with the wherewithal to overcome the present circumstances and be upbeat and get on with it.
After 8 years of captivity, Bob Shoemaker was finally released, his spirit unbroken by the horrors he endured. The first thing he did was call his wife.
I wondered who this man was. I didn't know him very much. We had a very short courtship. Our baby was born just 5 weeks before Bob was shot down and captured. I remember this phone call saying, "Hi, honey," and that literally erased 8 years of time. It's hard to explain that, but that was the person I knew. And that was the person that returned home.
Shoemaker had done more than just survive. In his view, he had grown.
Well, I suppose one way of looking at 8 years of imprisonment is to say, hey, that's just wasted time. You know, have to put that behind me. It's unfortunate. But paradoxically, you know, I gained something out of this 8 years of experience.
In the years after his release, Shoemaker became a rear admiral, a college professor, a devoted husband and father. And he turned the house that he'd so often imagined into a reality.
There was something in my soul I just had to get out, you know, and see the fulfillment. I wanted a house that had a lot of openness to it, and I think that was probably as a result of my being confined without windows or anything. So the house I designed has a lot of glass. I was deprived of freedom for such a long time. I think I really cherish freedom more than most people do now.
Bob, like almost all the other POWs that we interviewed and got to know very well, said that to the following question: if you could have eliminated the POW experience from your life, would you do so? In other words, you could have just wiped that out. It never happened. And Bob, like many of the others, said no, because I learned things about myself during that experience. And I learned tools, psychological tools in which to handle my life that I probably could never learn in any other way. And so it stood me in good stead for the rest of my life.
Being a prisoner really focuses on what's essential in life. And there are a lot of things that we can do without and still be happy.
The key lessons from Bob Shoemaker's story are that inside almost all of us is the capacity to overcome the most horrific of stresses in our life and even ultimately learn from that stress and thrive and grow as a person.
You learn resilience by falling down and getting back up again. And as you fall down and get back up again, you say, oh my God, I'm back up again. The setback or the failure that I thought I would never recover from, in fact, I've recovered from perfectly well, which means that I can do that again.
My resilience has been slowly learning to trust that whatever path I take can be positive. You know, even the worst decisions I've made have had positive ramifications if I choose to learn from them.
Well, I want to make sure that people know that I'm happy that I had a messed up childhood, that I'm glad I was damaged, because it made me a better actor, it made me a better writer, maybe a better creator. So I thank my family for that. I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. Then I would have, but not now.
Human beings have a talent for adapting, a talent for finding happiness where we'd least expect it. But if we can adapt to a lifetime in a wheelchair or a decade in prison, then why can't we adapt to the ordinary misfortunes of everyday life? The answer is that adaptation is something the mind does when there's nothing else it can do. We adapt to misfortunes when we know we can't change them. But when we stand a fighting chance, we fight. And that's why we struggle so much with temporary misfortunes.
I was always good at math. My dad worked in finance. When I was in high school, I took an economics class and we had to pick stocks. I just always liked it. Went to college, studied it there. My brother was on Wall Street at the time. He helped me get my first job. And 10 years later, well, here I am, unemployed in a chair.
Bill O'Connor was a bond salesman at Lehman Brothers when Wall Street began to collapse in the spring of 2008. He and his wife Stephanie had a new baby, a new apartment in New York City, and they knew they were in trouble.
A lot of people describe it that when you join a bank, there's like a bullet, and on that day that you join, they inscribe your name on it. And someday, if you stay there long enough, that bullet will be fired.
Bill saw a lot of his friends being laid off, and he worried about what would happen to him. But when the axe finally fell, Bill did something a bit unusual.
Steph was on maternity leave, and then she planned to have a sabbatical before going back to work. So she was planning on having 6 months. I said, I don't think I want to just start pounding the pavement looking for a job. What do you think if we buy an RV? Which,
and I said, I think you're crazy. And his mom was living here, and she said, I think you're crazy.
Yeah, wasn't a well-received idea at first. I found a very cheap Winnebago online. Spent the summer together as a family, driving around the country. We're just gonna break away for a little while.
Why would you buy an RV if you lost your job and had a new baby? Well, research on happiness suggests that Bill and Stephanie may have been spending their money wisely by investing in a shared experience rather than material goods.
It was great. You get up in the morning and you go out and have lunch by a lake, or you go swimming. It's just, time together. There's just freedom. You can just be driving along and you see something and then you say, that looks interesting, let's stop there. All right, let's stop there. And, we went and saw the six-legged cow in Kansas. It was a once-in-a-lifetime experience.
I think it really turned out to be one of the best things we could have done for ourselves.
But no vacation lasts forever. And when Bill and Stephanie returned to New York, Bill's unemployment began to seem much less like an opportunity and much more like a problem.
Coming back to New York was not good. I was coming back to play Mr. Mom and look for a job that, doesn't seem to be there. What time do you have to go to work on? You're just working in the office?
I'm working in the office.
With their vacation a rapidly vanishing memory, Bill found himself struggling to adjust to life as a stay-at-home father.
What else do I have to do this week?
It'd be great if you can get to the grocery store.
Yeah.
Just because we're pretty limited in what we have in the fridge.
Okay. Now we're gonna shop, bud. It's really worth $6 more, Maddie. Your mom is using generic right now. This could cause a disagreement, but we're getting it. These look identical, friend. I think you're going generic. Congratulations. You've just saved us $12. I hate, expensive grocery stores, so, I opt to go across to New Jersey to, Pathmark or ShopRite or something. We get toilet paper? We didn't get toilet paper yet. Goodness. You have to reorganize. It's bizarre to have gone from a world where I put on my headset in the morning and I had 150 phone lines and kind of lost without that, without the dialogue, without the interaction. And then just the confusion of, where am I going? I don't know. I have no idea.
Get you down. On your back. Smile.
The challenging thing, it's a full-time job. I've opted for a full-time job.
Maddie, what you doing?
When you just want a moment, you can't have a moment, so that's exhausting. I never saw myself doing the job I'm doing right now. It's bizarre.
You could tell when he had a successful day, when he had a good deal. It was so fun for him. He loved what he did. When he lost his job, it seemed like he really lost part of his identity.
You question, why me? How could he possibly pick me? I still send instant messages to the guy who I sat next to, like we're chit-chatting, every day, so. The relationships are still there, but it's like you got kicked off the train or something, and, you gotta watch that thing keep going down the tracks.
Bill's struggle isn't over yet, and there's no telling how long it will go on. For now, one thing is clear. Playing the role of Mr. Mom doesn't seem to suit him all that well. Being unemployed obviously makes us unhappy, but the reasons aren't entirely financial. When someone asks us who we are, we often tell them what we do, because work is more than a way to make money. It's a part of our identity. That's why when we lose our jobs, we lose a piece of ourselves. The same is true of illness. Being sick makes us unhappy, but the reasons are not entirely medical. Illness, like unemployment, can tear a hole in our identities and leave us wondering who we really are.
My hair was me. My hair was red, full, curly, shiny, long. So I was all hair. It had a presence, and I had a presence.
Michelle Gossett was a 51-year-old single mother when she learned that she had ovarian cancer.
Losing my hair was probably one of the most devastating things that happened to me with my cancer. I lost my hair in one day, and I thought that I lost my identity. I thought I lost my soul. I lost my strength. I actually have a different hairstyle almost every day. For instance, I'll wear my pink wig when I feel playful. My red hair with the roots, I think looks very natural. And I put that on to kind of even me out, but with a little edge. The brown ones, they more or less resemble a hairstyle that I would possibly adapt myself. And then I have little short sassy ones. And those are fun, just for a change. Sometimes it's not easy. Sometimes I'll get up and look at the wigs and why? I realize I still have cancer. So sometimes it doesn't really cut through that. I worry about my daughter. Natalie is absolutely the apple of my eye. She is my pride and joy. And Natalie and I have been through a lot together. I was a nurse, worked in critical care for a number of years.
Oh, it's so nice to see you.
And decided to go to anesthesia school. When I finished school, I had a promise of a wonderful job with a fabulous salary. I had a house on the water. My dreams were that Natalie and I could live a secure life in my future. And that didn't materialize. I was diagnosed 2 weeks after my graduation, and I'm on chemotherapy right now. My fears with my illness lie in that Natalie might not have her mother. And Natalie is as important to me as myself.
So how are you feeling?
Well, I'm really tired. It went well. Everything went great.
Michelle is struggling with her fear and anxiety. And like many others in the same situation, she's turning to the self-help industry for advice.
I'm just looking for secrets to find inner peace. I'm using aromatherapy baths, aromatherapy around my home. I'm living and eating more organic food. I found that I've been reading a lot of self-help books lately, inspirational readings, inspirational writers, William Dyer, Marianne Williamson, Louise Hay, different authors. You can heal yourself type things.
And I think that's what we all want. We want to enjoy life.
And it's so pressing for me to try and find these because I feel I'm reaching a desperation to find the meaning of life.
Michelle is one of the thousands who attended Louise Hay's conference.
What I wanted to gain from going to the conference was keys, tricks, guidance.
The healing has begun. Life loves you.
As a trained nurse, she isn't quite ready to believe that cancer can be cured by aromatherapy, crystals, or positive thinking.
I'm not willing to give up my chemotherapy for alternative therapies because I've seen tragic outcomes from that. They said, I'm just going to have a vegan diet and I'm going to think positively and that's how I'm going to live out the rest of my life because this will cure me. And their cancer just metastasized to their brain, their bone, their lungs, and they were done. I'm not ready to take that chance.
When I put myself in your position, I think if somebody told me that the reason I have cancer is that I had the wrong thoughts, is there a part of you that thinks, give me a break?
I've thought about it because I said, okay, if it's dis-ease in my body somewhere and it manifests in my cancer, is it something from my childhood? Is it an anger? Is it someone I won't forgive? That could lead to, I would think, maybe a stomach ulcer. Would it lead to cancer, gynecological cancer? I don't know. I don't know about that.
There is, of course, no scientific evidence to suggest that self-help techniques can cure cancer or any serious physical malady. But what about other kinds of problems? Problems like addiction or depression or marital strife? For many people, self-help appears to be a simple and inexpensive alternative to therapy or counseling. But do these techniques actually work?
Well, I'm a big proponent of decent self-help. Here we go, Dan, self-help.
Over the last 20 years, psychology professor John Norcross has directed a systematic study of the self-help industry, examining over 1,000 different books and programs.
We should be cheering about the proliferation of self-help. Approximately 75% of those who successfully changed a behavior or relationship have done so on their own without professional treatment. Self-help is the major pathway to how most of us grow. At the same time, there are inherent limitations to self-help, and not all the stuff out there is particularly good. A great book. And then the not-so-great book.
Norcross worries that what's advertised as expert advice,
all on the same shelf. Yes, right next to each other.
is often nothing more than untested opinion.
More than 95% of all self-help books are published without any scientific research attesting to their effectiveness or safety. And we estimate more than 99% of the internet self-help sites are launched without any scientific research attesting to their value.
So you're not just saying that some self-help is worthless, you're saying that some of it's positively dangerous.
Without any regulation and without scientific research, it's a buyer beware, and they're not sure what they're getting. I remember someone once comparing it to taking a 2-year-old toddler on a walk. As you're walking around, the toddler will occasionally pick up perhaps something of value, but mostly they're just picking up dirt and germs.
Self-help offers quick and easy solutions to complex problems. That's why it's so appealing and so profitable, from the corners of your local bookstore to the media capitals of the world. And yet, despite the proliferation of self-proclaimed experts, huge numbers of Americans get psychological advice from just one man. So who brought who?
It's a ritual at 5 o'clock when he comes on in our areas when the TV goes on.
We see Dr. Phil, then have dinner. I like Dr. Phil. I like his whole family. You just feel like a part of it.
How long have you been watching Dr. Phil?
Well, when he was first on Oprah years ago, I wouldn't watch it on that day because I thought he was so mean. I was like, he's so hard on people. I mean, now I think that's what I like about him is that he's just very direct, and he's just the way that he does, like the, you know, the how's that working for you thing. You know, like if it's not working, stop doing it. You know, so I think I like that.
Like the type of family that I come from, you don't talk about your issues.
Right.
You just kind of, you know, push it under the rug and you don't repeat it because there's a lot of shame involved, you know. And so Dr. Phil, he brings it out.
It's almost like an accelerated way to fix your problem because you can beat around the bush for years, or you can just, you know, nip it in the bud right then.
And so your goal is to inflict pain.
It becomes my goal. That I don't think when we start fighting that's my goal, but it becomes my goal during the fight.
Are you proud of that?
No, I'm not.
Well, no, come on, be serious now. Don't give me that crap. Don't give me that crap. Don't give me that crap.
Dr. Phil is clearly a showman, but he's also a trained psychologist who respects scientific evidence.
I have a staff of over 300 people on this show, and many of them are researchers. And so they'll get into the psych abstracts, the medical abstracts, the sociological literature, and pull out, you know, those cutting-edge overviews of everything that is at least the current understanding.
In my journey through the land of psychotherapy, looking into self-help, meeting therapists, going to self-help conferences, I found that there's huge distinctions to be made between different sources of help.
I think science informs practice. I think practice informs science. And if you don't have that exchange, I think you're going to miss some really important elements. But I'm not one of those people that thinks, you know, you can think your way to illness or you can think your way to health. I think it's a multifaceted aspect.
Dr. Phil is in the helping business, but he's also in the entertainment business.
I'm going to tell them and you how to fight fair.
And he knows what it takes to keep ratings high.
Tell him that he sucks in bed. It's just one more way to hurt him.
In the end, a television show is no substitute for professional help.
A lot of couples that go through this kind of thing, which is why I'm talking to y'all. You're kind of teaching to
Something Dr. Phil appears to
a lot
recognize.
of people at home thinking, boy, my marriage isn't as bad as I thought it was.
People watch your show hoping to get answers, and they do. Some people watch your show hoping to get all the answers, and of course they don't.
Dan, I've never been under the misconception that we're doing 8-minute cures on the Dr. Phil show. What we do try and do is give people a wake-up call, to get themselves thinking, to get themselves considering. But this is just that. It's a beginning place. It should open a dialogue. It should open a thought process. It should cause them to maybe write down 5 questions to ask their therapist or their doctor the next time they go in and see them, or to discuss with their spouse that night, then that's a great thing. If they take it beyond that, I think they're trying to do too much with the platform, too much with the venue.
What do you want to see him do?
Dr. Phil is undoubtedly helping some people by reducing the stigma of therapy. But dealing with life's problems is hard work. Self-help programs often focus on changing how we think, but research suggests that it can be more effective to change how we behave. And one program in particular has a track record of doing just that.
I had a perfect childhood. 2 parents who loved me and loved me unconditionally. I lacked for nothing.
William Cope Moyers, son of veteran journalist Bill Moyers, found out at a young age that all the family support in the world wasn't enough.
There was something going on inside of me that wasn't satisfied by all of those external factors that would typically define happiness or success. I was struggling with this sense of purpose and this sense that I wasn't good enough. I discovered the solution to this hole in the soul. I could medicate it in a way that required me only to use mood and mind-altering substances. I didn't have to try so hard anymore to be happy. I didn't have to try so hard anymore to be perfect. I could just get high. Taking drugs and drinking probably became a problem from the moment I did them. And I'm convinced that once I took a drink or a drug, I was off to the races.
By the time he was in his 20s, Moyer's addiction had consumed his life.
My fix was crack cocaine, so I was using $1,000 a week. You know, the money didn't matter. I mean, it did, but it didn't. I was doing anything to get high. My problem wasn't having money in my pocket. I had money in my pocket. My problem was finding my connection. My bottom was on the morning of October 12th of 1994, when in a full-blown relapse from my addiction, I was in a crack house in Atlanta, Georgia, and this simple question popped into my head: now what? And for the first time in my life, I did not have an answer. It's a simple question. Now what? Now what am I going to do? I didn't have the answer.
The key to his recovery? Moyers joined the world's best-known self-help program, Alcoholics Anonymous. AA is a free, peer-based support group that offers daily meetings in just about every city and town in the nation.
There's decades of research now investigating the effectiveness of 12-step groups, including AA, NA, and so forth. And the research is quite supportive. Regular participation is an incredibly positive factor. The key is that sense of validation, of universality, that we're all in this boat together.
I mean, in AA, we realize it's really pretty simple. This isn't rocket science. It's about togetherness. It's about we. It's about realizing that we don't have to go through life's highs and lows all by ourselves.
If I'm an alcoholic, I have to decide, am I going to drink? I can go to the bar where it would be harder for me. I can go to an AA meeting. I can seek out friends who will help me in my recovery. I can seek out friends who will ask me to go out for a beer.
Keith Humphreys, a psychiatry professor at Stanford University, has studied AA for over 15 years. He's identified social support, or what the folks in AA call fellowship, as being the key to its success.
In my career, I've studied a very broad range of treatments for addiction, and there are many different things that work, but none of them will fully supplant, I think, the power of a fellowship that can really become a part of a person's life for years and years and years and years. And AA has definitely figured that out.
I'm in that meeting with those people because they are exactly like I am. And so Joe, who I may know from 10 years ago, stands up and says, "My name is Joe, and I'm coming back after relapse. I got 6 days." I go, "Oh, yeah, that's what this is all about." And then an old-timer gets up and shares something on one of the steps, and he says, "My name is Bob, and I've been sober for 40 years." And I say, "Ah, yes, that's what this is all about."
AA create many, many opportunities for people to be helpful to others. Bring in the chairs and set up the coffee, but in most cases it's more involved than that. Leading a meeting or sponsoring other people to help them through the recovery process. And what research has shown is that the people who sponsor other members, the people who hold their hand out and support new members in recovery, are more likely to stay sober themselves. So that's, I think, part of the genius of AA, to recognize that to get help, one also needs to give it away.
Moyers is now the Executive Director of Advocacy at Hazelden, a drug and alcohol treatment center that employs principles based on AA.
I used to always believe that when I'm on my deathbed, no, I'll probably get high one more time, just to go through it one more time. No, I want to die sober. There is no cure for my alcoholism. There is a solution, and the solution is recovery. Recovery includes going to meetings.
AA meetings often end with a prayer. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. That wisdom is critical for everyone, and yet knowing what can and can't be changed isn't always easy. Most of us find it hard to accept that some of the wrongs we've suffered simply can't be righted.
I've been struggling with forgiveness for quite some time, 8 years to be exact. I had an accident that changed my life. I was in New Orleans. It's the weekend of my younger brother's wedding, and we were on a balcony at a club, and the railing gave way. There was a gentleman to my left who started to go over. His natural reaction was to reach and grab hold of something, and what he grabbed was me. But we went free-falling all the way to the street, which is about 30 feet below. I felt like I was going to die that night, and it's still hard to think about it.
Stephen Rowell continues to suffer from nerve damage and debilitating seizures. But even worse is the emotional toll that his accident has taken.
I've been holding a lot of anger and just a lot of pretty horrific emotions in regards to the club owner. It seemed that, every time I felt like I might be able to let go, I would have a seizure. I look back at some of my journals. I was really angry about this and relentlessly unforgiving. And it just kept me in that place. It kept me sort of trapped in that place.
And again, one more time, breathe in fully.
At the suggestion of his therapist, Stephen has enrolled in a forgiveness class at Stanford University, a 5-week program designed to alleviate anger, stress, and depression.
This is a guided educational practice in forgiveness. I lead you through a series of practices that at the end you become less attached to a certain negative point of view about something that's happened to you. I'm going to ask a few of you just to talk about what brings you here. How about you?
I'm being sued by somebody who's, there's no basis. It's just painful.
A bad childhood, had somehow anchored, me into a pit of negativity.
But I'm getting to the point where...
What I see is so often people have become paralyzed because their anger hasn't worked. They have no idea what else is available and are stuck by something that's not working. Anger over time becomes less helpful. It actually becomes crippling.
And sometimes I can't get beyond.
That's right.
What's happened in the past.
So what would forgiveness be? You're right. And what would it mean to forgive?
Well, for me, it would mean everything.
Somebody else.
Dr. Fred Luskin created this program in 1999. Since then, it's been tested around the globe.
We worked with people from Northern Ireland from both sides of that conflict. We have really good data that it was helpful to them. People would come, some of whose children had been murdered decades ago, and it was just eating them alive, and we taught them things about forgiveness, and we could show that it made a significant difference. So what would be a question out of that? They had reduced depression, reduced anger, physical improvements, reduced stress, and more hopefulness. Does thinking that someone doesn't deserve compassion, does that help solve your problem?
No, it doesn't.
Does thinking that someone doesn't deserve compassion help you feel at peace?
No.
So why do you continue to do it?
Well, because I hadn't taken...
In each class, Luskin provides exercises to help students see that they can't control what happened to them, but they can control how they think about it. The idea is to get people to see that even though their anger is justified, it isn't hurting anyone but them.
So the theme through all of this is the way you're dealing with it helpful to you? If it is, keep it. If it's not, change it. Try being more grateful. Try being more compassionate. Try telling a different story. Try arguing yourself out of feeling so entitled. Any one of those things can work. But the first recognition is, I may not be helping myself. If you do the same old, expect the same result. And don't blame anybody else for that, because we get something out of being righteous. We get something. It's a substitute for happiness, but we get something.
Dr. Luskin kind of provoked me. I actually left our second class very frustrated because I disagreed with him. But I went back and kind of really thought about what he was saying, and that's where I started to see a shift. What is it about me? Asking myself, what is it about me that I can do to change things? Really felt sort of a breakthrough in taking the class. That was sort of a turning point. Following the course, I called my attorney and said, I'm ready to settle. I'm ready to just put this behind me, start moving forward. I have reached a point of forgiving this man. I feel like I can finally join the living again. And I can't tell you how incredibly uplifting that is.
One way to change your life is to identify your weaknesses and fix them. But recently, some researchers have suggested that rather than worrying about our weaknesses, we should instead learn to capitalize on our strengths. And they're developing programs to accomplish this. Programs that are inspired by self-help, but that are grounded in science.
The question is, what self-help actually works, and what self-help is false and doesn't work.
Psychologist Martin Seligman is a professor at the University of Pennsylvania and one of the leaders of a new movement he calls positive psychology.
I realized that psychology had been all about whining and suffering and anxiety, depression, victim suicide, drug addiction, and I had spent 35 years working on those things, but that was half-baked. We're pretty good at misery, but what we weren't good at was what made life worth living.
What distinguishes positive psychology from any other kind of self-help? According to Seligman, it isn't the message, but the method.
We do random assignment, placebo-controlled studies and ask, does that make people happier 6 months later and less depressed? So this is an empirically based endeavor and a scientifically based endeavor.
Positive psychology has gotten a lot of attention, and its programs are now being implemented all over the world, in businesses, in hospitals, and even in the military. At West Point, the U.S. Army is hoping that positive psychology training will enhance leadership skills and make officers more resilient in the face of battle.
The graduates from West Point know that they're going out and they're going to lead men and women in combat. And in 10 to 12 months, they'll report to their first unit. And depending on the combat deployment cycle, they may be reporting straight into Iraq or Afghanistan, and they'll be responsible for the lives of 45 men and women.
If you were the commander of the Lost Battalion in combat, in dire situation, what character strengths did you rely on that were important for leadership in combat?
Everyone always thinks of physical leadership, but in this situation, it's that mental leadership that you were talking about. I think of the optimism and the hope that he is providing for them.
You know what you're good at, you can be mindful of those skills and then use them when you need them, and I think that's what this course is all about.
Psychologist Chris Peterson, a colleague of Seligman's, has helped create this new program for West Point.
What we have found in our research over the past decade is that you can't cultivate the whole of character, but you can certainly cultivate its components.
Right, and you're 100% correct, and I think
the cadets really like positive psychology because instead of focusing on weaknesses, what it is it's a focus on your strengths, and certain strengths may be at different levels, but what we're doing is saying, hey, let's take that strength and let's build on it.
Peterson's programs revolve around the idea that if you want to develop your character, you have to identify your strengths and use them over and over again.
Most of the interventions that have been created to date are based on a very simple premise that you are what you do. And if you do more of these things, then you will be more of whatever they represent. So how frequently are you kind? How often are you a leader? You start to keep track of that, and then you start to try to increase it, and you're measuring it all along so you can see your progress.
West Point is now testing the effectiveness of Peterson's programs, and the outcome is uncertain. Nonetheless, the Army is creating a positive psychology training course that will be required for all its soldiers. And positive psychology is also being used by civilians, like Bill O'Connor.
Yeah, it hasn't been a good couple weeks.
Bill still faces a bad economy, with no jobs and no prospects.
How do you focus on doing a financial job search when you can see the whole system is just crashing? How do you call up a guy and say, hey, do you have any idea who's hiring today? You sound like an idiot. So it's, that's going nowhere. I mean, it's...
With his situation growing worse, Bill's sister-in-law suggested that he get help from positive psychology coach Senya Maiman.
So what I'll give you over the course of our coaching are tools. So literally hammer, screwdriver, I will give you tools to start some goals.
Ciência received a master's degree from Martin Seligman's program at the University of Pennsylvania. She's trying to help Bill put his unemployment in perspective.
Because the problem's obvious. The guy doesn't have a job, and he wants to figure out what he's doing. But okay, he knows that. He's known that for a couple of months. How can we, rather than say, that's the problem, how can we move around it in a way that actually feels fulfilling at each step of the way? And one of the mind exercises between this week and next is what's called the 3 good things exercise. So what it is every evening you write down, today this happened. So for example, Maddie was in a great mood the whole time we were at the park. And then below it, you write the 3 reasons why they happened. So why was Maddie in a good mood at the park? I played with him or I engaged him. The reason the why is important is when we look at your whole week of whys, we're going to start to see patterns.
I feel like we're making baby steps right now, which is probably the right thing to do. Come up with 3 good things that happened today, or identifying strengths. Is your mommy?
Hey, Maddie, how are you?
She's on her way to the airport.
At first, it seemed like it moved him in the right direction, and I was happy about that. And he got more gratification out of the things he did do right, which is things like, well, I got Maddie on the subway today, or, oh, today when Maddie took a nap, I had time to work on my resume. I did this or I did that, or I made a bunch of phone calls to people. I think that's the best way for him to think about things, because if he dwelled on the negative, I think it would just be a downward spiral.
At Ciência's suggestion, Bill takes an online survey to help him identify his strengths.
Please be honest and accurate. We cannot rank your strengths until you answer all 240 questions. Wow, all right. I find the world a very interesting place. Sure. Every day I look forward to the opportunity to learn and grow. I have never steered a friend wrong by giving bad advice. There's a lot of negatives in that. I must stand up for what I believe, even if there are negative results. I work at my very best when I am a group member. Everyone's rights are equally important to me. I am the most important person in someone else's life. Hope so. What's up, buddy?
This survey has been taken by hundreds of thousands of people online, and it's a cornerstone of many positive psychology programs. But it doesn't seem to be helping Bill.
Yeah, it's hard to apply that all the time to come up with tasks that are going to take advantage of your strengths. If your strength is, humor showed up as one of my strengths, I'm not going to, I don't know, what am I going to do? Just go out there and stand on a corner and tell jokes or something until people laugh? I mean, it's like, yeah, I don't know.
Okay, your industry's broken. What are you going to do? You know your skills, which you know how to do sales, you know how to do high yield, you know derivatives, you know a lot of different things. So you have your skills, and then you have your strengths, which are a little broader than skills. So I am pulling out your VIA Signature Strengths Survey. So if we look at this, and you're looking at these cards spread in front of you, which one really jumps out at you as, yes, this is definitely me?
I don't know. Ranking them is tough.
Positive psychology techniques and strategies are particularly helpful for people in difficult circumstances. I have friends who have lost jobs, and they say, "What does positive psychology tell me to do?" And I go, "Well, this positive psychologist is telling you to apply for new jobs and go to the interview and be cheerful and be engaging, be the sort of person they want to have around."
Hi, Justin. My name's Bill O'Connor. I wanted to get a little information on a posting I saw you guys had for the UAE investment analyst.
Bill may not be sure about the value of positive psychology, but he never stopped looking for work.
Position of investment analyst.
After months of searching, he finally found another job in finance. But his success didn't change his views about positive psychology.
The positive psychology doesn't answer the hard questions. When we look at where we're going to live, that's not an emotional decision. That's a rational decision based on number of variables. I mean, I guess it felt like I was fishing a lot of times.
Nevertheless, Stephanie noticed some real changes in her husband.
He does have a tendency to be skeptical about things that don't feel as hard or quantitative or proven. I mean, I think it's really easy to say, oh, it's jotting down 3 things that you did well today or 3 things that were good about today is minor. But I think it had a really big impact.
Giggle. My wife and my son are everything to me, right? My family's the most important thing in my life. It was in the beginning, it was through this process, it is going forward. So if anything through the process, that's my real strength, and that's what I've drawn upon.
So do you mind if I use my napkin while you play with him?
Yeah, no problem. No.
Hi, buddy. What's up?
The idea of focusing on strengths instead of weaknesses is interesting, but does it work? The jury is still out. Even the founder of positive psychology worries that the enthusiasm has gotten ahead of the evidence.
I think the press and the publicity that positive psychology has had has greatly outstripped the science. And I think when I think about clinical psychology 50 years ago, I think it got it was overpromised both by its practitioners and by the press. So for me, if I had my druthers, it would be to build the science, and then kind of leak out the findings.
Positive psychology has some very promising new ideas, but for now it's probably fair to say that they need more testing. Of course, some scientists think that the most promising ideas aren't new at all. One of the best studied techniques for improving well-being was developed not in a clinic or a laboratory, but on a mountaintop 2,500 years ago.
Meditation changes our relationship to our thoughts and emotions. There's nothing magical about it. It's not mysterious. It can be addressed with the known mechanisms of science.
Psychologist Richard Davidson has been studying the benefits of meditation since 1992, when the Dalai Lama invited him to India to measure the brain activity of Buddhist monks.
He had heard about me through mutual friends and knew that I was a respectable, rigorous neuroscientist who had interests in meditation. And he was interested in promoting scientific research on meditation. And we thought that this would be an amazing opportunity. We can bring portable equipment with us and schlep it up the mountain and see if we can collect some data. So we had quite a journey. We brought about 5,000 pounds of equipment with us. We looked like this crazy traveling rock band with, these enormous cases.
Unfortunately, once Davidson was ready to collect the data, the monks had a change of heart.
They said that they'd be happy to teach us everything they know about meditation, but they didn't really want to do the tests.
But the Dalai Lama himself wanted to continue fostering the dialogue between Buddhism and Western science.
This kind of dialogue, very helpful to expand human knowledge about these not yet explored and still vast subject. Our knowledge very limited. So, particularly about inner world, inner science, inner space.
In 2000, the Dalai Lama began sending monks to Davidson's laboratory at the University of Wisconsin, where they participated in a series of neuropsychological studies. The results surprised Davidson himself.
I thought about meditation as relaxation. In fact, what we see in the brain of an advanced meditation practitioner when he or she is meditating is heightened activation, not relaxation.
Davidson's studies of Buddhist monks and other experienced meditators suggested that while they may appear to be resting, their minds are actually intensely focused. And as they meditate more and more, their brains begin to change. When Davidson compared scans of the monks to scans of people who'd never meditated, he found that the monks showed considerably more activity in the left prefrontal cortex, a part of the brain that registers positive emotions.
There are certain circuits in the brain that are more sensitive to the processing of negative emotions and other circuits that are more sensitive to the processing of positive emotions. And more than any other organ in our body, the brain is built to change in response to experience. It's a learning machine. The scientific evidence suggests that we can actually train our mind and shape its circuitry in our brain in very specific ways to promote increased levels of well-being.
I think scientific findings also very, very useful, very convincing. It can be useful for medical science and also can be useful for bringing new generation, more healthier mind, more compassionate mind.
Just give yourself a chance to settle into your seat, to settle into your body, and to settle into this moment.
The toxic effects of the chemotherapy keep all of the cancer levels low. So when I stop the chemo, what's to stop it from just flourishing again and from just devouring me? It's really important that I put myself in the state of mind that I can stay calm and cope with it.
Allow the focus on the breath to expand.
Michelle Gossett has begun studying mindfulness meditation. She attends a weekly class at the University of Pennsylvania and does daily exercises at home in the hope of reducing her fear and anxiety.
I'm doing a 40-minute meditation every day, and it's extremely difficult because our thoughts distract us, and it takes a lot of discipline.
And the only security that we can ever have is comfort with and confidence in our ability to manage uncertainty.
I think most people would agree that physical exercise is good for your health, and the same with mental exercise. If we took the training of our mind as seriously as we take physical exercise, we can actually train our brain to transform our happiness.
I don't dwell on the sadness. I have a lot less anxiety now since I've been meditating. And I have to say that my anxiety has decreased by at least 75%. I find that I'm really not anxious. I'm very calm about it. I do get sad, but I don't dwell on the sadness. I used to think that things would make me happy. More money, success, prestige, position would make me happy. And I'm realizing now that that's not the fact. I think you can't really put a price on happiness or put a label on happiness. Happiness comes from within, and happiness comes from experiences that we have with people that we love.
The secret to happiness is that there is no secret to happiness, that it's a choice that you make minute by minute, second by second, and you have to be willing to take the sour with the sweet.
Is happiness an experience, that comes and goes, or is it a state that you can live in for long periods of time? I don't know.
I'm just happy I have my wife and my children and my many dogs and birds and cats, and maybe if we could lose a couple of those dogs.
I think the secret to happiness is being busy. And the secret to happiness is you don't have time to think, am I happy?
Human companionship is the greatest joy. If I look at the times in my life where I'm most happy, where I'm enjoying myself the most, it's when I'm with my friends or my family and I'm doing something adventurous, something kind of mildly dangerous, and laughing a lot.
So, is there a secret to happiness? Well, yes, but it isn't very much of a secret. Scientific research suggests that a lot of things matter: money, health, work, but that one thing matters a lot, and that thing is social relationships. We're one of the most social animals on our planet, We need each other for just about everything. So it isn't very surprising that nature's designed us to experience happiness when we're connected to others. Family, friends, lovers, those are the social connections that matter the most. When they're strong, we're happy. When they're lost, we're devastated.
Going with us.
How are you? I'm good. How are you?
Renee and Brian Cloyd live in Blacksburg, Virginia.
Welcome.
They're doing today what they do several times each year, driving a group of college students over 100 miles to rural Appalachia to help repair homes in this impoverished community.
Let's do it. You want to go head up this way?
The Cloyds are volunteering their time to help other people.
No, don't touch it until you get lined. There you go. You have snapped the line, ladies.
But they're also hoping to help themselves.
Someone said there's been a shooting at Virginia Tech. I didn't even think about it. And then something just hit. I turned on the radio, just listening, trying to find some news, and I had heard that 22 have been shot and killed at Virginia Tech. And I remember screaming. And I called my mom, because I knew she had a computer, and I said, could you please check on the computer?
On April 16th, 2007, their daughter Austin, a freshman at Virginia Tech, was killed in a shooting rampage that left 33 people dead.
We were trying to call Austin. Every other parent, every other friend was trying to call those students. And I heard from one of the emergency response workers, the most difficult thing for them was to hear the cell phones going off and being unable to answer by just hearing all those cell phones going off over and over. That's what that day was like. It was a day of horror and hopelessness.
Sometimes it's really comforting to be in here. I mean, this is a picture of she and a friend at one of the football games.
You know, the initial emotion when we lost Austin, it's just like the life had been sucked out of us. And not only we had no sense of direction, no sense of how we would ever get past that moment.
The Cloyds kept asking themselves, what next? But try as they might, they just couldn't find an answer.
Life can end so quickly that everything one does, everything one plans for, dreams of, can be gone in an instant. So what's life about?
And I thought, okay, we gotta let people know who Austin is. She's not just a dead person. She was a vital person who was making an impact.
As a high school student, Austin did volunteer work in Appalachia. Her parents hoped that by devoting themselves to her cause, they'd connect with the people who'd connected with their daughter and move their own lives forward.
Most of the people that we meet out here that we work with on their homes, they all have a story. And the story almost always involves tragedy and something that's happened to their family.
Thank you very much for letting us visit with you.
Thank you for doing it.
And it causes me to know everyone has pain. So it helps to put our grief in perspective.
Dawson's favorite quote is, no one can do everything, but everyone can do something. And if everyone does something, then together we can change the world.
Hey ladies, how's it going? Hey. I don't know how long it takes for people to reflect upon, memories of children that they've lost and feel mostly happy about that memory instead of mostly sad. For me now, it's still mostly sad and maybe a little happy.
Okay, why don't y'all help him so he doesn't cut his fingers off? Stress safety to this man. A lot of people in this world just don't have the confidence of being loved.
And I personally feel like I have that to be able to give to others. So coming on trips like this and getting to know these students, I can't do it for Austin anymore, but if I can just give it to one more person, then then they can give it to someone else. Because I don't have her to give it to anymore. You're right, Jared. So go to the...
Yeah, okay.
Can we really transmit happiness to others? If we do something to make another person happy, do they then do the same thing for somebody else? In fact, new evidence suggests that happiness may be as contagious as the common cold, that it can be passed along from person to person, and that it can travel farther and faster than anyone imagined. This is Framingham, Massachusetts. In 1948, medical researchers began tracking the residents of this town, trying to learn about the behaviors that cause heart disease. Their work continues today. Known as the Framingham Heart Study, it's one of the world's most extensive epidemiological studies, containing 6 decades worth of data on the health of more than 15,000 people. And hidden in this mountain of data is a deep and powerful secret about the nature of human happiness.
Your happiness depends upon whole large clusters of people you don't even know and who you have no way of knowing.
Nicholas Christakis is a physician and a sociologist. He became interested in the Framingham study not because he was interested in heart disease, but because he was interested in social connections.
These individuals had had their social network ties repeatedly assessed over this 32-year period, and as it turns out, had had various aspects of their emotional lives assessed as well. So what we could tell is we could tell who these people were connected to every 4 years or so for 30 years, and we could tell, for example, whether they were happy or depressed or lonely, and in some cases anxious, repeatedly across time.
Using the Framingham data, Christakis and his colleagues mapped out a web of more than 50,000 connections between friends, family, and coworkers who participated in the study. Then they began to calculate how changes in the happiness of any single person affected the happiness of others in this vast web of relationships. The results were astounding.
What we found is that if your friend becomes happy, it increases the probability that you will become happy by about 15%. And if your friend's friend becomes happy, someone you don't even know perhaps, it increases the probability that you'll become happy by about 10%. It's only when we get to 4 degrees of separation, only when we're speaking of your friend's 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 friend, that person's emotional state is no longer associated with your emotional state.
Everyone knows that people can make each other happy. But before this study, no one had any idea just how powerful this effect could be. Christakis' work shows that happiness spreads through social networks like a virus, that happiness is, in a very real sense, contagious. There's no doubt about it. We're all connected. And those connections exert a powerful influence on our happiness. Sometimes they can even save our lives.
I lived here about 40 years ago when I was a kid. Just walking in the door of my house was so unpleasant.
Michael Mattis was born in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and the troubled relationships of his childhood left an indelible mark.
I was an only child. I grew up with my mother and my grandmother. My mother worked 2 jobs as a waitress to support us because my grandmother was home all the time taking care of me. The lid came off that predictable situation by 2 events. My grandmother died, which left us in a void, and then my stepfather came in. And that's when the alcoholism reared its head. My mother would be in bed. My stepfather would be up in a chair with cocktail in hand. My mother would be bedridden for maybe up to a month. And she would even call for me in a drunken tone to bring her a drink or food or something like that. I was, of course, bitter and angry about what was now going on. In essence, I'd lost my mother, the mother that I had known, to this alcoholic life. And that's when I began to really start living more on the streets and started to get into trouble with my friends, my new family. And the trouble started simply with shoplifting, escalated to burglaries, car thefts, so that we were pretty much running around doing what we wanted. Right over here was my friend's house. He used to deal LSD right out of the back of the house there. A good source for all of us at the time. I and my friends, we'd just do everything in our power to find ways to alter our mood. We'd, drinking, drugs, LSD, speed, you name it. It was pretty much anything we can get our hands on. Right up here on the left is a house that we were all holed up in, and we were busted up there by a very spectacular bunch of police outside, and they had us right over here in front of this house, all of us pinned down, handcuffed on the ground. I was arrested 24 times total. The vast majority of that was for car theft, occasional break-ins, and other sorts of misdemeanors, drunken behavior, disorderly stuff, and the like. But I remember every time going down to the juvenile detention center with its drab green cement walls and just a profound sense of depression that would occur within me, and just the hopelessness. And to this day, I can remember the deep, gut-wrenching depression that I would come over me in a wave. I don't know what the future holds. I had a meeting with my parole officer after I'd been arrested one more time subsequently. And I was sitting in the car outside the high school, and he told me, "You're done. One more arrest, and you're going to be tried as an adult." I had at least the insight to know that if I stayed in this environment, I was going to get in trouble again.
Although many of his friends would soon be in prison, fate had something different in mind for Mattis, whose life was changed forever by a single social connection.
I got a job at a very high-end furniture store that sold very expensive modern furniture. It's an environment that allowed me to learn a lot about the other side of life, where there was money, culture, art, wine, and the like. And this is something I had not experienced before, so it allowed me to become aware of this as a possibility. But the real transition for me in terms of helping to guide me came through fluke interaction that I had in delivering furniture to a surgeon. It was a very big job that we had, and I ended up going out there multiple times to install custom-made furniture. And so I got to know him. For whatever reason, he saw something in me, and he decided to take me under his wing.
Oh, I see. My first impressions of Mike when he first came in the door, there was a spark there that was blatantly obvious to me. And his persistence in pursuing our relationship was conspicuous, and it was infectious.
But I write a letter to the dean of the medical school. I mean, it makes no sense. I wouldn't do it today. Right.
I would go out to his house on Saturdays and just hang out with him, and he might take a nap on the couch while I would sit there and watch football or something. But when it came time for me to ask him questions and get some guidance, he always gave me the right advice.
He said, I had a difficult time even getting a high school diploma, and I haven't been to college, and I can't read, and I can't add a column of numbers together. And my response to that was, well, just do it.
He saw worth in me, and it could be developed. And that was what decided my fate. I'm a full professor of thoracic surgery in the Department of Surgery at the University of Minnesota. And I landed upon surgery when I got onto the rotation as a medical student. All of a sudden, here we are in a high adrenaline environment, risky activity, life and death, all the things that were certainly embedded in me and my past and how I grew up, and just perfectly.
The story of Mike's life illustrates beautifully what happens in childhood, and going down a dark road doesn't doom you. That you can turn your life around, and you can construct a new life with the help of other people.
Psychologist Ann Maston studies how children respond to adversity. She became interested in Mattis because of the way he used his adult relationships to overcome a troubled youth.
He encountered people who began to care about him. He connected with mentors who opened doors for him and coached him.
Yeah, we probably should check with up close, but why don't you...
For almost 30 years, Maston has been working on a study that tracks over 200 people, many of whom, like Mattis, grew up in difficult circumstances.
We recruited them when they were 8 to 12 years old, and then we followed them up after about 7 years, 10 years, and then 20 years. We wanted to study what was happening both when things were going well and when things were not going so well. And we learned a lot about the nature of stress that kids encounter, and also about all the kinds of protective factors that seem to make a difference in children's lives.
Maston's findings tell us that the key to overcoming childhood adversity lies in developing strong relationships with competent and caring individuals, regardless of how or when we meet them.
When you're young, they're parenting type figures. When you're older, they can be mentors, friends, romantic partners.
Any concerns or issues? You got any pains? Anything new overnight?
In Mike's case, these kind of people came into his life late when he was at the doorstep of adulthood. And he was optimistic, even though he probably didn't have too many reasons to be optimistic. And I think people around him responded to that, to his motivation and interest in going in a new direction. And I think what you see in his life is a kind of positive snowball.
When I reflect back about how did this happen, how did I manage to make a success out of this mess? I go back to the observation of others and using those as significant opportunities for personal development. Without a doubt, one of the most important things that bring me happiness is being engaged in my family, in taking care of them, in fostering my children's development, in being a good husband to my wife. These are sometimes trite comments that people make, you know, being a good husband, being a father, and all that stuff, but I actually mean it, and it's something I came to learn. It wasn't something that was just immediate. For me, happiness means being engaged in things that involve other people and being committed to something that is about other people.
Social connections are clearly the key to happiness. That's a cause for celebration, but it's also a cause for worry, because as people age, their social networks get smaller and smaller, which suggests that the older we get, the unhappier we should become. And yet, surprising new evidence reveals it's usually the other way around.
As we get older, we're increasingly clear about what our strengths are, what our weaknesses are. We're increasingly clear about who cares about us and who doesn't. And so we're able to mold our worlds better.
Over the last 2 decades, psychologist Laura Carstensen has been monitoring hundreds of individuals to see how their emotional lives change as they age.
We recruited a group of participants who were initially aged 18 to 94. And we asked them to carry an electronic pager with them. Each time they were paged, we asked them to tell us the extent to which they were feeling each of 19 different emotions. And we had them give us this information 35 times during a week.
Carstensen's findings tell us that people become increasingly positive as they grow older, as long as they aren't suffering from physical pain or debilitating illness.
It was pretty dramatic. Essentially, what we found is that 70-year-olds were experiencing fewer negative emotions than 40-year-olds. 40-year-olds were experiencing fewer negative emotions than 20-year-olds.
In later studies, Carstensen identified several causes for this remarkable shift.
Humans know that they're mortal. We know that we have only a certain amount of time on this planet, and this changes people's motivation and changes their emotional experience. As we age, it appears that people are better at experiencing the moment, enjoying what they're doing at a particular point in time. In some sense, it's the silver lining of getting old, that we don't have to prepare for the future. We don't have the burden of the future.
The major consequence of this change? Older people tend to alter their social behavior.
When motivation shifts, so you're focusing on what matters most in life, for most people, they start to focus on their relationships and their closest relationships.
You value your friendships, you value your children, your family.
Betty Schneider is 87 years old. She's one of hundreds of elderly people who have participated in Carstenson's studies.
As I've become older, it seems that I really appreciate my life even more. When I was younger, I didn't even think about old age, but it turned out to be wonderful.
Betty is a widow. Her husband, Jack, succumbed to a stroke 6 years ago. But like many people in her situation, she doesn't dwell on the loss. In fact, her daily life is remarkably busy. She takes classes, spends time with her grandchildren, and has a full social schedule.
I miss Jack. We did so many things together. We were married for 61 years. And after Jack passed on, it was pretty glum. And gradually it's become better again. There's lots going on, and he would enjoy a lot of the things that I'm doing. But I'm sorry he's not here. But I'm just so glad we had all those years.
In some ways, it challenges our most fundamental assumptions about happiness, because we think that happiness is derived from youth and power and attractiveness, health, all of these things that decline with age. But yet we're finding that among older people who are clearly suffering these kinds of losses are also somehow experiencing life emotionally better than ever.
I feel very fortunate. I often go through all the good things that have happened, what's been good today. It's interesting, younger people don't really believe that you can be optimistic and feel positive about things that are happening when you're old. But believe me, you do. And I know I don't have a long time to live, but it's turned out to be a very, very rewarding time.
We start out in high chairs, we end up in wheelchairs, and somewhere between the two, we all have to figure out where our happiness lies, and then start marching in that direction. So, who brought the map? Well, everyone did. Grandmothers and uncles, priests and rabbis, taxi drivers, bartenders, motivational speakers, they all have something to say about happiness, but they don't all say the same thing. And that's where science comes in. By using scientific methods to identify the causes of human happiness, we're learning that the secret of happiness was never very secret. We're connected to each other. We belong to each other. We're made for each other. Life is a journey through time, and happiness is what happens when we make that journey together.
$10,000.
15? 15, you think?
20, 21,000?
600.
20. 18.5.
24.
It's at least 40.
Look at it.
4,500,000.
650.
20.
650.
This textile would be worth about $500,000.
$500,000?
No way.
I knew it. It's just a blanket.
Laying on the back of a chair. Well, sir, you have a national treasure.
Wow.
A national treasure. Congratulations.
I can't believe this.
To learn more about happiness and well-being, visit the This Emotional Life website at pbs.org. This Emotional Life is available on DVD. To order, visit us online at shoppbs.org or call PBS Home Video at 1-800-PLAY-PBS. Funding for This Emotional Life is provided by the following.
I spent 9 years in the military, and I got out of the military to take custody of my son. I want to be the best dad, and the only way to do that was to get my education. My name is Adam, and I am a Phoenix.
SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration.
And by
the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. And by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.